That wasn't me on the phone. I felt my face drain white. I asked her how it was possible. That phone call I made while being in the storage room sounded so real. I even heard a dial tone. I know that sounds crazy, hun. Don't look at me like that. Sit down. Anne sat me down and I spilled a slew of questions at her, but she didn't answer everything. According to her, shadowy entities like Fred can mimic voices and sounds that they've heard. She said that's why one of the rules about mopping the drinks aisle at 12:05 a.m. recommended music with headphones. When she's done it, sometimes she would hear what sounded like her husband calling her name from the parking lot, or her son knocking on the back door saying he needed to get in. But her husband knows not to come at night, and her son doesn't live in this town anymore. Another time, when she was on night shift, it sounded like her cell phone was ringing in her pocket while she was in the middle of mopping. Out of habit, she absent-mindedly picked it up, but then a realization and dread filled her. Her phone is always on silent, so it couldn't have been ringing. She never made that mistake again. Anne apologized for not being clear about the job details. She said after seeing and doing this job for so many years, she took the little details for granted and didn't consider that a new person wouldn't know the little tidbits and tips she's picked up from experience. I didn't accept her apology, and that last part seemed like an excuse. She and her husband deliberately left out these details of the job description. My mind flashed to when I got the job and thought it was odd that Anne's husband only phone interviewed me and didn't seem to want to meet in person before giving me the offer. At the time, I chalked it up to desperation. I would have left and never come back if it weren't for my curiosity. I really wanted to know if all of this was real or if I had the craziest mental trip in the world without having done any drugs. Anne told me she's had a few employees who stuck around over the 20-plus years that she and her husband owned this gas station. She usually tried to get town locals. They were acquainted with the strange supernatural occurrences around them. They don't happen to everyone, but some. However, as the residents grew older, many of their children skipped town and moved elsewhere as soon as they could. I asked Anne why she and her husband don't skip town and move elsewhere. Or why not just close the gas station before nightfall and avoid the whole night charades thing? She said she couldn't. Her husband inherited this gas station from his own father. It's an old town and all of the original buildings experience odd events when they deviate too much from how they were 50 years ago. Because this gas station was originally a stay open late gas station for trucks that passed through town at night, something wanted it to stay that way. Her husband had younger siblings, but in order for them to be able to leave town and lead normal lives, someone had to take on the role of owning the family gas station, and it landed on him as the eldest. Once her husband did try to abandon and shut down the gas station, but misfortunes and near-death freak accidents started to happen around the family. When he reopened and restored the normal working hours of the gas station, it stopped. The big question you guys want to know is how I'm still here to type up this report to you. I have no memory whatsoever after hearing Fred speak into my ear in the storage room till later. When I woke up lying face up in the employee break room, light streamed from the front of the store, and I realized it was daylight. Long story short, I didn't die that night in the gas station. That's not the case for my predecessors in this job, apparently. Anne says others have mysteriously disappeared during their shifts before, presumably because they made a mistake. Anne doesn't know if they died or if something else happened to them. Anne and her husband reckoned that it had let me off easy. It had let off another employee easy before, but took his leg. Like it took his leg off clean. He technically lived through the encounter, but died from bleeding in the middle of the night while blacked out. Obviously, both Anne and her husband have survived making mistakes more than once, probably because they had inherited the gas station and were needed to run it. I wasn't sure whether to believe them. I tried asking for the names of previous employees, but Anne refused, citing privacy for the families affected. She can't stop me from Googling missing person reports, though. I'm sure in such a small town, it would be all over the newspaper and town talk. However, I should tell you all that I didn't survive completely unscathed. The ear where I had heard Fred speak was now deaf. Even though she was being somewhat uncooperative and a little sketchy, she did look at me with concern when she realized that I became deaf in one ear as a result of working that shift. She divulged that the reason that she worked the night shift these past years was because her husband had gone completely blind. He had accidentally fallen asleep while doing the night shift, and he woke up in the next morning, shaken up by Anne. It was a bright and sunny day, but he asked her why the lights were still off. Anne herself was getting older, and she was worried that she would fall asleep one day too. She needed a replacement, and perhaps that's why I lived instead of suffering a mysterious disappearance. I'm not sure if that was a truth or a threat. Next, I wanted to know who or what the heck Fred was. Anne shook her head and told me that was a story for another day. Not now. You're tired from the shock. Go home and rest up. I refused and asked her about Fred again, demanding my right to know what almost killed me. Shaking her head vigorously, she started to shoo me outside the door of the gas station, saying, I'll tell you another time. You can have the rest of the week off, but I need you back on Monday. What? Monday? This lady thinks I'll come back? Before I could shove my way back inside the store, Anne quickly locked it up to keep me from pestering her, and despite it still being opening hours. As she walked away and ignored me, I commented under my breath that Fred wouldn't like that she locked the door. Fine. Bewildered and my head swimming with more questions than answers, I turned to go back to my car and head home. I got my left ear checked by the doctor, and she told me the eardrum had blown out and was not repairable. I might recover slight hearing, but wouldn't get full functionality back, ever. Since then, I tried to apply to many different other local jobs after that because I was determined not to come back. There was no way I was ever coming back because that gas station is crazy and is not worth dying over. But for some reason, whenever I visited businesses to apply to in person, I kept getting turned down immediately. They would say that I'm not fit for the job despite being well qualified, or they would say that the job was already taken or filled up, which made me skeptical. For a couple of those jobs, the opening was just posted that same day. I also pursued some job ads, sent an email with my resume, but right away I got multiple messages undelivered, bounce backs, or errors that said the email recipient did not exist or was unreachable. Had I misspelled the email address somehow? I got a friend of mine from another city to apply to the same jobs and reply to the same emails, but this went through just fine. Then, he tried to apply to things on my behalf using my resume, but he would get turned down right away, inexplicably. It did not take long for me to put two and two together. Something wanted me to stay. The past few nights confirmed it. It started the first night the day after the gas station incident. My bedroom clock showed 10:30 p.m., and I was standing in front of my mirrored closet door. That was when I saw it. A shadowy silhouette was barely visible through my opaque curtains. The edges weren't solid like a real person backlit by streetlights outside. It was blurred and the whole figure was almost see-through. It wasn't moving, but was facing towards me. I froze. I live in a nearby small town. This was not the same town that Anne's gas station was in. Something followed me home. I froze too long because after about 10 seconds, suddenly, the light turned off in my room. You could hear a pin drop in the silence after that. I dared not turn around, and I felt the same sensation of ice crawling across my scalp. I blinked, and the silhouette was bigger, like it had gotten closer. If it had a face, it would be right up against my window. Against all of my senses screaming at me not to move, I forced my frozen muscles to jerk awake and ran into the bathroom connected to my bedroom and made a noisy show of washing my face, splashing water and brushing my teeth, as if I were getting ready for bed. In the frenzy, I knocked over my ceramic toothbrush holder and shattered it on the floor with a loud crack. Dread coursed through me, and I was afraid that I would die any second now. I hoped that I made the right decision. However, death did not come for me. Not yet. As I noisily brushed my teeth and splashed water around in the sink, I gradually felt the sensation of ice dread leave me, but I kept up the charade for a few more minutes. Eventually, a sense of aloneness washed over me, and I wondered if the presence had left me alone. I cautiously used my phone camera to check the bedroom window. The figure was gone. I went to bed but did not sleep much that night. Ever since that first night, the figure has revisited me every night, watching me through the curtains. I thought about getting blacker curtains to completely block it out, but feared not to be able to see it approaching and being attacked unaware, so I decided against it, even if it was creepy and gave me a heart attack every night. I eventually figured out that if I went to bed and held still as if asleep before 10 p.m., it would come check in on me and leave without incident. However, as the days grow older to the coming Monday when I supposedly have to return to work at the gas station, I've been getting an increasing amount of bad luck every day. My car won't start, things oddly misplaced, I lost my keys and found them later thrown in some bushes. The last straw was when my apartment's front door suddenly got stuck in an unlocked position, despite being in fine working condition. Remembering that the gas station's red sheet had said to deadbolt the door when being pursued by the shadowy figures, I didn't take any chances and bought a cheap deadbolt and affixed it to the door. I'm going to have to go back to the gas station on Monday for one shift. I want to get all this freaky stuff to stop. I haven't been eating well because of the constant, crushing pressure of fear and anxiousness that something is going to happen to me any second now. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. Or any suggestions on how to perform Monday's shift perfectly. It feels like there's too many things to keep track of, but I guess if Anne and her husband learned to do it nearly every night for years, I could too. Until then, I'm just reminding myself to act natural. Don't be afraid. I'm a normal and good citizen. I will go back to work. A busy citizen is a good citizen.